Welcome back to the MyRadar podcast. I am meteorologist Mike Linden. If you have not already, subscribed to the channel, and of course, remember to click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video. This podcast can also be found on Soundcloud, so you can listen to it on the go. Go to soundcloud.com/myradar. We continue on with our lineup of awesome guests. I've got a really good one today. He comes to us from WBZ in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm joined by the Chief Meteorologist, Eric Fisher, formerly of the Weather Channel, and arguably the king of weather Twitter. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm not sure about that, but I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, well, you just look at that follower count and just at the sheer volume of good tweets that you have. It's one thing to tweet out a bunch of, nonsense, but you're just coming in with the heat all the time. You're setting the bar very high.
Well, we like to keep it real. It's nice to just mix weather with, trying to just be like a normal person, not a meteorologist necessarily, or to be really sciencey with your talk, but just trying to get people interested in what's going on. And most importantly, just trying to get people to know what's going to happen instead of just looking at, a broad brush forecast and then having their plans ruined sometimes.
So in doing some research to get set for this interview, I found the clip on YouTube where you got, I guess, a lot of vitriol from Kansas City Chiefs fans thinking you were the starting left tackle for the team, Eric Fisher. Can you talk to me about what that was like? I mean, I would imagine the notifications were just flying off the handle.
The richer Eric Fisher. Yeah, the more well-known one over in Kansas City. Whenever there's, some draft action or they're in the playoffs or trade talk, I get all sorts of Chiefs chatter heading my way, which I've always hoped that maybe someday he would try to pay for my Twitter handle. It's for sale if he's watching this and wants to have his name as his Twitter handle. But, the Chiefs fans, it's a understandable mistake, but that one playoff game a couple of years ago where right toward the end, he had a holding call and it just cost him the game. As soon as it happened, I'm like, well, there goes my night. And, all night long and into the next day before people kind of realized what was going on.
Well,
and in all fairness, Chief is in my bio, so I can see where it'd be confusing.
There you go. And hey, he was the #1 overall pick when he was drafted, so I've got to imagine that he's got the cash to stump up for the Twitter handle, if need be.
Very reasonable price. You can have it.
So I wanted to talk to you about, of course, all things weather, but I've asked everybody this question. What was your light bulb moment that made you go, you know what, the weather and me, we're together here and we're just going to continue on down this path? What did you have a specific moment or a specific event that really just set you on down this path?
There were a few big ones that were very memorable for me when I was younger. Particular storms that really kind of kept the interest going and really fired it up. One of them, I grew up in Western Mass, was the Great Barrington Tornado back in 1995. It was on Memorial Day weekend. And I remember being at a barbecue and the Weather Channel was on and the warnings were scrolling across the screen and everything's bright red. And my mom said, we have to go. And we started driving through. We got into the storm and it was just chaos outside. The sky was greenish. And I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then Great Barrington was not far away from where I grew up. So we got to see some of that tornado damage. And also in that same time frame, we had the blizzard of '96, which was very big out in my neighborhood. And that winter in general was the winter up until 2015 here in Boston. We also had the superstorm in '93, which out toward Western Mass wasn't as big as some other areas, but still in my mind at that age, it was a pretty good sized storm. And so kind of that run there over those couple of years really got me interested in weather.
I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you do not have a Massachusetts accent in the slightest bit. I'm from New York, so I feel like I've heard it a lot over the course of my lifetime, but you just have that TV voice from Anywheresville, USA.
Well, people think that everyone, around Boston has that accent, and it's really particular towns, neighborhoods, and especially near the coastline. I'm from Western Mass, and Western Mass is almost like a Albany, New York kind of accent at times, or Berkshire's has their own thing. My wife grew up in a suburb of Boston. She doesn't have an accent. No one in her family does. So it kind of skips some people here. If you grew up and you were right near the coastline or in a couple particular towns, you'd have it. But I do not. Although when I worked in Atlanta, they told me I had a Boston accent. I'm like, guys, I think you're a little off here because definitely doesn't have too much in here. And even if you had one, we have people who grew up in the area who had a Boston accent. They kind of learned to get rid of it as they got into TV.
So now I know that you were for many years at the Weather Channel in Atlanta, but what brought you back to Boston? I mean, that being your home state, of course, I'm sure had a lot to do with it. But is it just something that's really special about that city? Maybe the food or the culture of winning lately with the sports that brought you back?
Hey, that's not so bad. We certainly have had our fair share of some good fortune in the sports department, but what really the big difference was that our family was here. I love my job at the Weather Channel. They have tremendous people. It's such an interesting place to work. You get to experience so much different weather. And then this job came up, and it's a great job and an awesome city, and all of our family was up here. And these jobs don't come up very often. I said, if I have this opportunity, I've got to take it now because it could be 20 years before it comes up again, if ever. So for us, I thought it was the best choice, and it's great. We live in the city. We have a young son now, and so having family around makes all the
Hey,
difference.
you got to shoot your shot, and hey, it worked out in this instance. So now I know that you ran the Boston Marathon, which, by the way, congratulations. That's an incredible, incredible feat. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. My wife is a huge runner as well. What was your time?
Not good this year.
Hey, you
I'm not
finished.
particularly fast.
That's good enough.
Finishing is good. My wife is the fast one in our family, but the nice thing about working at WBZ is we are the official media station of the Boston Marathon, which means there are a couple of numbers that the station gets. So I run for charity, and I don't have to go through, the qualifying time, and I can't qualify with my time. Usually I run in anywhere from between 3:40 and 3:45, but this year was a little over 4 hours. When the sun came out, it got hot. My legs started bothering me this year, and it was my worst marathon that I've run so far. But it's nice to finish still, and it's such a unique race. I mean, if you're ever going to run a marathon, Boston is the one you
You'd have
want
to
to run.
peel me off the pavement if I was running in a marathon. That's insane. So knowing the weather that day, was it difficult going into it knowing, gosh, today is going to be one heck of a day to see and feel a little bit of everything running for 4 straight hours?
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a challenging day. And leading up to it, it was trying to time out when the downpours were going to cross the course, if the sunshine was going to break out. If so, what was the timing of it? And so it started out great. My wave started after the morning rainfall, and it was cloudy and 60 degrees. I mean, that is just what you want. But as soon as the sun came out, it was 70 and it was muggy. And that's for people who spend the whole winter training, it's too hot. It doesn't sound hot, but for us, just coming out of the winter season, it definitely feels that way. Fortunately, it did get cloudy and rain a little bit toward the end, which helped cool us off. But that day, I was talking to Chris Trianos, who runs the medical tent. He's like, "What are you doing to me? What are you trying to do?" From the morning of the logistics and the thunder and the lightning, and then the wind and the end of the day, and the chillier air and the heat, it was everything. It's all
I
over
mean,
the
that kind
place.
of encapsulates the Northeast a little bit, which I think gets a bad rap. People just assume it's always cool and the winters are bad. But having grown up in New York and you forecasting in Boston, can you speak to the seasonal variabilities that you get in the Northeast?
I mean, we get pretty much everything here. I mean, working in Boston, we have our heat waves, we've got our frigid winters, we've got blizzards, we've got tornadoes, we've got tropical weather. We can have floods. The only thing we don't have here are dust storms, and that's about it. So we see some pretty big swings. Even just the course of a spring week, you could easily be 90 one day and in the 40s the next. We just had snow here the other day, but the same week last year we had tornadoes and hail and 90-degree weather. So year to year, it can be completely different. Season to season can be completely different. It keeps us on our toes for sure, trying to forecast for such a diverse area. I wouldn't say our swings are as dramatic in a 24-hour sense as, say, the Great Plains. But in terms of season to season, it's quite a ride every year.
Now, I know that you've done your fair share of live reporting, which I always got a huge kick out of going out into the field, whether it's the aftermath, it's the during, or it's even the before to give the preview. And I know that you've covered, I mean, quite a few significant weather events. Can you speak to some that really touched you? I mean, maybe one that really sticks out in your mind?
The tornadoes always stick out the most to me. The big high-end tornadoes was also something I just didn't grow up with around here. I mean, every 20 years we might have a big tornado in Massachusetts or Connecticut, but they usually don't happen more frequently than that. But going to Moore, Oklahoma,
Wow.
that in 2013, that was just tremendous damage. The super outbreak in April of 2011, I spent a lot of the time there in Alabama. I started in Memphis and then went to Charlotte and then ended up in Tuscaloosa and then Hackleburg and spent about 10 to 14 days, I think it was, in that area. And just looking at how quickly a vibrant area can just be leveled by the weather. I mean, that was very eye opening. It's just something that a lot of people will never see in their lifetime. But once you see it, it's a little bit easier to talk about tornadoes and emphasize with people and just try to explain to others what a tornado
Hmm.
can be.
Yeah, and I saw a bunch of clips of you as well. I guess in the midst of hurricane coverage of you out, the classic shot of the meteorologist out in the elements where you can barely hear what's going on. The wind is trying to blow you over. What is that like for people that will never get to experience something like that in their lifetimes? I mean, I've got to guess that you go from the news car, you're out in the live shot, and you're right back in the car afterward.
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't see behind the scenes is that, we usually pick a location that is the safest spot for us. We think about what the storm surge forecast is going to
Right.
be, where we can park a truck safely. Is the hotel we're staying in a hurricane rated hotel for a particular category? You get into that more when you're in the Outer Banks and heading down toward the south. You'll find more of those types of locations. And then you're usually, running into the truck for some cover in between all those different live shots. But I have to say the biggest surprise to me the first time I was really out in a hurricane was how much my body got beat up. I woke up the next morning so sore. I felt like someone just took you out back in an alley and punched you all over the body the whole night. You were just soaring and almost felt like bruising all over from being hit with the wind and rain for a long period of time. That was kind of shocking when I woke up the
Do you
next
have
day.
any special gear that you have on you when you go out into that event, or is there any kind of like mental preparation that you have to do, knowing that you are going to be face to face with Mother Nature?
Well, when I worked at the Weather Channel and traveled a lot, I had basically a shelving in my closet, and it was like, here are the sweatshirts, and here are the jackets, and here are the rainproof pants, and here are the goggles, and here are the polo shirts and everything. And I would just have a bag at the bottom. So if I got the phone call and said, you got to go, I would just take out this shirt, this jacket, these pants, load it up, and take off. So I have a full array of waterproof clothing ready to go at a moment's notice. And you kind of learn as you go. The first couple of storms, if you're not prepared, you learn what works, what is best for you, and you bring some good boots because keeping your feet dry and warm is the number one thing. It's kind of like going into a battle zone. That's what you want to take care of
You
the
go. That's
most.
some great advice. I would imagine things are a little bit calmer now at WBZ as opposed to getting sent all over the place with the Weather Channel.
Absolutely. This is a more stable job. It's been the trade-off that I thought it was going to be, where the Weather Channel was very exciting, but it was also very unpredictable. I didn't see my wife very often. It was in airplanes and hotels a lot. And you never quite knew how to plan or how things were going to go. Here, it's mostly a Monday to Friday. Every once in a while, there's a special event or there's big weather on a weekend where you might come in or cover for somebody. But it's much more stable. The travel is not across the country. It's every once in a while out and about around here. So yeah, this is a little bit more of a calmer job, and it's nice now, especially having a family where I don't have to worry about being gone for a couple of weeks on
I
end.
hear you. Now I know that bringing it back to the Northeast now. I know, and I've seen on your Twitter many times pictures from the Mount Washington Observatory in New Hampshire, and you are a volunteer. Do I have that correct? You're a volunteer at the observatory.
I did volunteer. I did one of the volunteer
Okay.
stints there at the observatory years ago now. It was back in 2010. Yeah, 2010 that I was a volunteer. So anyone can do it. If you go and you look at their website and you look up the volunteering options, you have to start with one that's not in the winter. They don't let you do the
I
winter right
bet.
off the bat because it's an interesting place. You could be caught and not be able to really go outside for the entire stretch that you're there if you're in the winter. So they kind of want to make sure you're not insane
Yeah.
before they have you there for 2 straight weeks, but you live there for 2 weeks.
Oh my
You cook,
gosh.
you take care of the people who are working there, and the trade-off is you get to stay there. Their rooms are kind of like a cruise ship. It's kind of metal and a bunk bed, and you get to hang out on top of a mountain over 6,000 feet and experience the daily changes, and they can be pretty wild. It's a very unique place. I would definitely recommend doing it. Anyone who's been
Now,
thinking about
compared
it.
to the winds that you have dealt with at the surface level, 6,000 feet, which are more intense?
People always overestimate wind. When it's 40 miles per hour, they think it's 70 miles per hour. I've been up there, and the strongest wind I've felt up there is about 70 miles
Oof.
per hour. And I would say even in a hurricane, the strongest winds I've felt are probably 65, 70 miles per hour. And after that, you're not outside as much. And I didn't get a chance to get into the heart of some of the bigger hurricanes during my time at the Weather Channel. 70 miles per hour feels like a lot of wind. When it's hitting you in the face, your jowls are flapping backwards. It's just howling, screaming. You can't even hear anything, or can't hear yourself think. So once you get there, it's strong. If you get to 100 and you get to do the observation deck walk up there on Mount Washington, that is tremendous wind. Very difficult to
Was there
stand.
ever a moment when you were doing any live reporting, especially during a hurricane, an active weather event, where you felt like you were in danger?
We had a couple that were close. Hurricane Irene, because of where we were in Virginia Beach, there were some chunks of the building that were getting ripped off, and some trees that were starting to break. So we ended up moving closer to the truck after a couple pieces of debris came by. When we were in Memphis once, there was a tornado warning as the storm was coming right over us. We had scouted a spot that had a big sky view, but it also had an underground bunker nearby. So we ran into the bunker, and actually did this. I Skyped
Wow.
back with the Weather Channel from the bunker until the storm passed over, and we got back out, and our equipment was trashed.
Gosh.
We got a tent and a couple other things out there, and the storm took care of that. There was a tornado that touched down with that one. So it got hairy a couple of times, but hopefully you planned, you've made some precautions or taken some precautions, and you end up staying safe. It's really kind of amazing that very few people have ever been hurt reporting on the weather.
No kidding. And for any young meteorologist watching or listening out there, you got to do anything you can do to get that shot up. Whether you got to Skype in a bunker or what have you got to make that slot.
The show must go on, within reason, but we try not to ever miss anything.
Right. Now, I wanted to talk to you more, of course, about your social media presence. As I said at the beginning, you are the unheralded king of Twitter. Almost 1 million followers, which is, that's huge. Do you ever look back at any time that you tweet, whether it's something innocuous or something of grave importance as far as weather information to get out there, do you ever really think about how many people that you are reaching?
I'm always kind of surprised about where people are. Sometimes I'll ask a question about Australia and someone will respond who's in Australia. Or, someone says, "Oh yeah, I'm in France," or someone who's following from Utah or Nevada. I'm like, I'm not quite sure why, but they're there. And it's interesting to know how many different places in the world someone might be following the random tweets of a Boston meteorologist. I do some tweets that are not necessarily just weather, some that are not just Boston, which I think is the best way to branch out on social media, not necessarily just doing your own little slice, but kind of looking at some other things and other topics. It's a platform to show people who you are, because on the news every night, sure, they get a good sense for your personality, but it's 2.5 minutes and it's over, and you're just trying to hit the bullet points of a forecast. Social media allows you to talk more about your other interests and the other things that you're doing and the places that you're visiting. And I think that's how you end up building more relationships online.
So what's the secret to gain, to increase the followers, to have more effective tweets? What's the secret?
I don't know. I have no idea why it is the way it is, and why, for some reason, I've seemed to do all right with it. Just kind of keeping it real, I guess. Some people spend their time being bombastic and trying to be as inflammatory as possible, and they get huge followings doing that. Other people are more benign and still manage to do something, be successful with it. But I think for the most part, it's just trying to relate to people, and probably most importantly, actually responding to people instead of just setting things out there and then disappearing. I don't know if everyone's Twitter interface is kind of the same, but I know with mine, I don't see a lot of replies. They don't necessarily come into my feed. I have to go into and open up everything that I tweet and then see what people are saying. I don't know if that's an algorithm thing, if that's something, if you have more followers, that's how it works. But you have to go through and you have to actually interact and talk to people. And if you don't, then I don't think you're going to get a good following. The other thing is I have a couple of rules. And one of my Twitter rules is, if you are writing something and you think about it for even a second, don't
Ooh,
write
I've been there.
it. Don't
I've
send
been
it out.
there, definitely.
You even give it a thought. Yeah, that it might not be a good idea. It's not a good
I,
idea. And so I try to avoid getting burned. So
I
far,
remember
so
seeing a
good.
special years ago with Herman Edwards, former coach of the New York Jets, who was talking to the rookies at the symposium, and he basically was saying, if you even have to think about it, don't press send. And that has stuck in my
So
mind since I heard that.
number one rule, because we've seen a lot of people put their foot in their mouth and end up looking really bad. And the other thing is it can be kind of a cesspool
Mm,
sometimes if you're out there talking on Facebook and Twitter. I've gotten to the point now where if anyone is unnecessarily aggressive or mean-spirited or uses poor language, I just block them.
there you
I'm
go.
done. Like, I don't let those people have any real estate in your head, because otherwise something that can be a great tool becomes something that's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your well-being to be looking at that, because unfortunately, not everyone is kind or nice online. So to me, it's not worth the noise. If someone's not really being someone that I would talk to in real life, then I'm not going to talk to them on Twitter
Social
either.
media has just found a way to like weave itself into the culture. How would you say that social media has impacted your job as an on-air meteorologist? Has it helped? Has it detracted? And where do you see it going, even in the next couple of years?
I think it's been a huge help. I mean, I know for a fact that one of the main reasons I got the job here was because management really liked the social media following, and it was something that they thought they needed more of here. Um, I think that I've met a lot of colleagues and learned a lot online. It's been a great classroom. Even if it's not all excellent, you get to meet people that you normally wouldn't have interacted with before. So in that regard, it's fantastic. Where it's going, I don't know. I think it's going to be just a lot of more fragmented media. It's definitely the way things have gone. We're doing things like this, getting into more podcasts, or, doing YouTube channels, and you're doing all these little snippets that can be found online but aren't necessarily tied to anything. The trick is actually making that a job, making money off of it. Otherwise, you're just talking into outer space, and I don't know if that's a worthwhile endeavor. So I don't know what the next thing is going to be. It seems like we've kind of hit a lull in advancement of social media. Facebook's still around, but I don't know anyone my age that's still using it. Um, Snapchat is still there. It's there,
Yeah, it's
but
there.
it doesn't seem as popular as like a year or two ago. Instagram is popular, but I don't know what's coming next. But we'll try to get onto it and make sure that it's a part of our successful
So
job.
we'll close out with this. What advice would you have for a young meteorologist getting into the world of TV weather that may want to follow a similar path to such as yourself, with the live reporting experience, the social media game, and of course the experience to get on the air and talk about a sunny 7 day? What advice would you have for that person to get to where you are today?
Well, I'd say the first thing is just be yourself. Let your personality come through. I mean, that is important. Don't try to be something you're not, because people will know. They'll be able to tell, and it's not going to serve you well. I would say yes as much as possible. Someone asks you to do something when you're starting, seize the opportunity. It might be tough in the beginning, might be a lot of work. You might have holidays or days that you miss out with your friends, that you want to go to the beach and you're stuck in an office. But if you want to get somewhere, you just got to take the opportunities when they come and hop on them. That's very important. And then the other main thing is don't burn bridges. Because we have all the social media and all the different ways that people can interact, it's a small, small world. And as soon as you say something that can come around and bite you later, I mean, you could get blacklisted in a hurry from anywhere, really. There's a big trail out there. And I just am old enough or young enough where I just came into kind of growing up with that. Maybe people are more aware of that now who are younger and getting into the field. It's kind of been beaten in as a lesson, but everything lives online and nothing really goes away. And people will remember if you said something that didn't sit
No
well.
kidding. Eric, this has been fantastic. I have one last question for you here, and this is somewhat not related to the weather. What is your forecast for the Boston Celtics next season? As a New York Knicks fan, I'm hoping Kyrie Irving shows up. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but what's your forecast for the Celtics for next season?
You can have him. We're done with him. I, I don't think that. we're going to have the same team next year. I think there's probably going to be some pretty big changes in the offseason. I think some of the fan favorites are Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and we'll see if Gordon Hayward can kind of build off of this year. This year kind of seems like a rehab year coming off the injury. Maybe he's back to his old self next year, but if Terry Rozier and Kyrie are still here next year, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, as would I. And again, as a New York Knicks fan, I'm hoping for anybody. We've heard about these mythical free agents, Chris Paul, LeBron, Blake Griffin. They're all going to show up, and we end up with Carmelo Anthony. Kind of been my life as a New York Knicks fan. Eric, this has been fantastic. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about or something that I may not have touched on?
No, I think it's great. Covered a lot of ground.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on to speak with us. I really appreciate it. And as for us here at MyRadar, we'll see you in the next one.